The celestial observer hung in the void like a shard of frozen lightning, its crystalline hull pulsing with the slow, rhythmic heartbeat of Zapirian bioenergy. Commander Zakel watched the blue-green glow of the ship's core through the translucent command deck, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the shifting hues of the cosmos beyond. For 300 cycles, the Zapirian Dominion had watched. They had watched the humans claw their way out of their gravity. Well, their first crude vessels belching fire and radiation into the void. They had watched their wars, ugly, chaotic things fought with primitive kinetics and fission bombs. They had watched their cities burn and their nations fracture, their species too volatile, too emotional, to ever be more than a curiosity. And now, at last, they had been ordered to act. Zakel flexed his chitinous fingers, the bioluminescent veins beneath his carapace flickering with restrained energy. The Dominion's ruling conclave had deemed humanity unworthy of the stars. A species that tore itself apart could not be trusted with the vastness of the galaxy. The observer was not merely a scout. It was the first blade of the pruning. "Commander," Scientist Quilex intoned, his voice a harmonic hum that resonated through the crystalline comms. "The human vessel approaches." Zakel turned his gaze to the projection sphere, where a single ship, angular, brutish, a slab of blackened metal and scorched plating, drifted toward them. No elegant curves, no organic flow, just hard edges and exposed weapon mounts. It was an insult to the artistry of Zapirian engineering. "Analysis?" Zakel asked, mandibles clicking in distaste. Quilex manipulated the holographic interface, his digits tracing glowing sigils in the air. "Primitive fusion drive, no energy shielding. Armor composition suggests layered tungsten and depleted uranium, crude, but dense." A pause. "Their weapons appear to be chemical propellant cannons." Zakel exhaled through his vents, the bioluminescence along his spine dimming in disappointment. This was what the Conclave had feared, a species still bound by Newtonian brutality. "Open a channel," he commanded. The comm sphere shimmered, resolving into the image of a human. Female, her face scarred, her eyes dark and unyielding. She wore no ceremonial garb, no insignia of noble lineage, just a battered uniform and a gaze that burned like a dying star. "Zapirian vessel," she said, her voice rough, unmodulated by the harmonic grace of Dominion speech. "This is Major Rebecca Cross of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are in sovereign human space." Zakel's antennae twitched. The arrogance of it was almost amusing. "Major Cross," he replied, his voice layered with the subsonic harmonics of superiority. "You misunderstand. There is no human space. Only space the Dominion has not yet claimed." The human did not flinch. She did not rage. She simply stared. And in that moment, Zakel felt the first cold whisper of doubt. Because her eyes were not the eyes of a prey animal. They were the eyes of something that had survived its own extinction. And it was waiting. Behind her, on the bridge of her ship, another human moved, a male. His face half, hidden behind a tactical visor. He was murmuring something to a console, his fingers dancing over controls with the ease of a predator circling wounded prey. Zakel's instincts flared. Something was wrong. "Quilex," he subvocalized through his neural link. "Scan them again." The scientist hesitated. "Commander, their power signature just spiked." The human ship's engines flared, not the weak blue flicker of fusion, but the searing white hellfire of something older, something hungry, and then the lights went out. Not just on the human ship, on the observer. Every crystal dimmed, every system died. In the sudden, suffocating dark, Zakel realized the truth too late. The humans had not come to negotiate. They had come to hunt. The darkness was absolute. Zakel's crystalline carapace prickled with static discharge, his neural interface flickering in and out like a dying star around him. The observer's bridge had become a tomb, its luminous panels inert, its pulsing energy cores silent. Only the faintest glow of emergency phosphorescence remained, casting jagged shadows across the hexagonal command deck. Impossible. Zapirian technology did not fail. It was alive, self-repairing, woven from the same resilient crystalline matrices that had birthed their civilization. Yet now it lay dormant, as if something had reached into the ship's very soul and strangled it. Quilex. Zackel's voice was raw, stripped of its usual harmonic resonance. Status. The scientist's frilled cranial ridges twitched in distress, his bioluminescent markings flickering erratically. Systems are... A pause, a shudder. Gone, Commander. Not disabled, erased. A cold ripple passed through Zackel's thorax. Beyond the dead viewports, the human vessel hung in the void like a specter. Its angular hull, once dull and unremarkable, now pulsed with an eerie rhythmic light, deep crimson veins throbbing beneath blackened armor. It was no longer a ship, it was a heartbeat, and it was getting louder. Aboard the pale horse, Major Rebecca Cross exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the inside of her sealed helmet. The HUD flickered to life, painting the Zapirian cruiser in jagged outlines of thermal blue and cold, dead violet. Systems confirmed dark, murmured Captain Reynolds beside her, his voice distorted by the Vox grill of his combat rig. EMPs took everything but life support. Rebecca didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the alien ship's bridge, where the commander, Zackel, their intel had named him, stood frozen in the gloom. She could see him, not through sensors, not through scans, through the targeting reticule of a weapon older than human civilization. The pale horse shuddered around her, its ancient reactors growling like a waking beast. The ship's AI, no, not an AI, something deeper, whispered in her skull. They do not remember us. Rebecca's lips curled. The Zapirian revelation Quilex, claws trembled as he parsed the residual data. The humans had not simply attacked. They had rewritten physics. Commander, he whispered. Their energy signature. It matches precursor artifacts. Zackel's spine stiffened. The precursors were myth. Legends of a dead empire that had once ruled the stars before vanishing into the abyss. The human ship's armor rippled, not metal, not alloy. Dark fibrous tendrils slithered across its surface, knitting together wounds that hadn't existed seconds before. The vessel wasn't just alive, it was healing. Zackel's mandibles clicked in horror. The humans had not survived their wars. They had become them. And now, like all predators who had tasted blood, they had come to finish what they started. Next section, teaser. The pale horse's boarding claws unsheathed. The void screamed. Section Fey. The first contact that wasn't the pale horse moved, not with the mechanical precision of Zapirian vessels, nor the elegant pulse of crystalline drives. It lunged. A predator's strike, muscles of dark alloy coiling beneath its armored skin. The void between ships vanished in an eye blink, swallowed by the human warship's advance. Zackel's command spire shuddered as proximity alarms shrieked. His crew scrambled, their bioluminescent markings flaring panic blue. Tactical holograms flickered, recalculating trajectories. But the numbers made no sense. The human vessel had no right to accelerate that fast, to turn that sharply without tearing itself apart. Yet it did, and it was laughing. Quilex's claws dug into his console, the organic crystal yielding like soft clay. His tertiary eyes darted across the scans, parsing the nightmare unfolding in real time. The pale horse's hull wasn't just regenerating, it was adapting. Where Zapirian railgun rounds had punched through, the flesh-like armor now thickened, forming jagged ridges of blackened keratin. The wounds of their first volley had already birthed new defenses. Commander, Quilex rasped, his voice modulator cracking under strain. Their biology, it's not just healing, it's learning. Zackel's mandibles locked. He had seen the archival footage of human wars, their crude fission bombs, their chemical-propelled bullets. This was something else. This was evolution weaponized. A flicker on the tactical display. The pale horse's ventral spines split open, revealing rows of serrated docking clamps. Not boarding tubes, claws. The void screamed. Inside the pale horse, Major Rebecca Cross exhaled as the ship's neural interface pulsed against her temples. She didn't need screens to see the Zapirian vessel. She felt it, the way a wolf feels the rabbit's heartbeat. The pale horse's hunger mirrored her own, a deep gnawing thing honed by centuries of being prey. "Captain Reynolds," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "prep the welcome party." Marcus Reynolds didn't smile. His augmetics whirred as synaptic triggers armed the exo-troopers in the hold. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were landmines with legs. The pale horse's claws struck. The Zapirian reckoning the impact rocked the command spire. Zakel's world dissolved into chaos as the lights flickered. Their soft blue-green glow replaced by the hellish red of combat alerts. The hull groaned, a sound no living crystal should ever make. Quilex scanners died mid-pulse when they rebooted. The readings were impossible. The human boarding mechanisms weren't cutting through the hull. They were digesting it. Acidic enzymes melted Zapirian bio, alloys reducing millennia of perfected technology to slurry. And then the humans came, not in pressurized suits, not with cautious steps. They burst from the breach like bullets from a wound, their armored skins glistening with something too slick to be sweat. Their eyes, augmented pupil, less, scanned the Zapirian crew with the cold focus of surgeons identifying tumors. Zakel reached for his sidearm. The nearest human tilted its head. The gun's energy cell died in his grip, drained dry by a pulse of invisible radiation. The human didn't even blink. Quilex's final scan completed. His vocal sac collapsed. "Commander, their blood, it's nanite, saturated." The humans didn't bleed. They swarmed. Next section teaser. The first Zapirian died screaming. Not from pain, from conversion. The first Zapirian died screaming, not from pain, from conversion. Commander Zakel watched in frozen horror as the human boarding party moved through his ship like liquid shadow. Their armored forms absorbed the pulsing blue-green light of the Zapirian corridors, their movements too precise, too inhuman. The nearest human designation tags flickering as Cross-R paused beside a wounded Zapirian engineer. The engineer's carapace was split open, his bioluminescent blood pooling in fractal patterns across the deck. Cross knelt. A single drop of her blood fell into the wound. The engineer convulsed. His screams turned guttural as his veins lit up with silver filaments, his flesh rippling as something beneath the skin began rewriting him. His limbs elongated, his carapace cracked, reforming into segmented plates. His terrified eyes locked onto Zakel, pleading before the pupils dissolved into featureless black mirrors. Quilex's voice was a whisper. "They're not just killing us, they're upgrading us." The humans didn't speak. They didn't gloat. They moved in eerie synchronicity, their nanite, laced blood already threading through the ship's crystalline infrastructure, dissolving Zapirian biocircuitry and replacing it with something darker, sleeker, hungrier. The walls themselves seemed to pulse in time with their footsteps, the ship groaning as if in ecstasy at its own corruption. Zakel's tactical display flickered. The Indomitable wasn't the only human ship. The void behind it moved. Dozens. No. Hundreds of vessels peeled away from the darkness, their hulls absorbing starlight like black holes. No engines, no emissions, just silent, predatory shapes sliding into formation behind their flagship. The Zapirian fleet had come expecting to crush a primitive species. Instead, they found an armada that had been waiting for them, and it was smiling. The void between stars had never felt so small. Zakel's mandibles twitched as his tactical display updated, or rather, degraded with every passing second. The human fleet didn't just outnumber them. It enveloped them, a swarm of blackened hulls, drifting closer with the slow, deliberate grace of predators circling wounded prey. Their ships bore no markings, no insignias of empire or conquest. Only the faint, pulsing veins of crimson light along their edges betrayed any sign of life at all. Quilek's claws trembled against the crystalline console, his bioelectric field flickering in distress. Their signatures, they're not just cloaked, they're wrong. Zackle didn't need the scans to confirm it. The human vessels didn't emit heat. They didn't radiate energy signatures. They consumed them. The Zapirian long-range sensors, designed to pierce through nebulas and stellar interference, slid off the human ships like water over glass. Only when the humans allowed themselves to be seen did the tactical grid register them. And even then, the readings were fragmented, as if the ships existed in pieces across multiple dimensions. Then the first transmission came. It wasn't a hail. It wasn't even a voice. It was a scream. The Zapirian communications array lit up with a burst of raw, unfiltered data, a distress signal from the Vexus, one of their forward scouts. The signal was corrupted, laced with interference, but the visuals were clear enough. The Vexus hung dead in space, its crystalline hull cracked open like an egg, its interior glowing an unnatural violet. Shapes moved inside, humanoid, but wrong, too fast, too fluid, their limbs bending in ways that made Zackle's exoskeleton crawl. Then the feed cut to black. A second later, the Vexus detonated, not from an external attack, but from within. Its core ruptured in a silent blossom of blue-green fire, the explosion contained and twisted by some unseen force before collapsing inward, the ship crumpling like paper in a fist. Zackle's crew didn't speak. They didn't need to. The message was clear. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Quilek's voice was hollow. They're not just killing us. They're studying us. The human fleet remained motionless, waiting then, from the heart of the Indomitable, a single vessel detached, a sleek dagger-like craft, its hull a seamless obsidian. No weapons, no shields, just a single pulsing red light at its prow, like a predator's eye. It glided toward the Zapirian flagship, an invitation. Zackle's claws dug into the command console. He had expected demands, surrender terms, perhaps even the crude posturing of a young species drunk on its own power. This was worse. The humans weren't negotiating. They were curious. And curiosity, in a species that had turned war into an art form, was the most terrifying thing of all. The docking request blinked on his screen. Zackle accepted. The void watched, and the humans came aboard. The airlock hissed open, revealing the human delegation. Zackle had expected warriors, beings clad in battle, scarred armor, their faces twisted with the same predatory hunger he had seen in the footage of their wars. Instead, the humans stood before him in simple, unadorned uniforms, their expressions unreadable. The first was a woman, Major Rebecca Cross, according to the data flickering on his display. She was shorter than he had anticipated, her frame compact but radiating a coiled, lethal precision. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they did not blink as they locked onto him. Behind her, Captain Marcus Reynolds stood like a shadow given form. His posture relaxed in a way that suggested he could explode into violence at the slightest provocation. Zackle's carapace prickled. They carried no visible weapons. That, more than anything, unsettled him. The humans did not need them. The silence stretched, thick with the hum of the ship's crystalline power cores, the faint pulse of blue-green energy flickering through the translucent walls. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something metallic, like old blood. Then, Major Cross spoke. Her voice was soft. It made the hairs on Zackle's spine rise. "You came to our home," she said. "You thought we would break." Quilek shifted beside him, his mandibles clicking in unease. The scientist had spent decades studying humanity, dissecting their history, their wars, their relentless expansion. He had warned the High Council. They had not listened. Now the truth stood before them. Cross tilted her head, studying them with the same detached curiosity one might give to an insect beneath a microscope. "You don't understand us," she continued. "You saw our chaos, our violence, and assumed weakness." A flicker of movement. Reynolds' fingers twitched, just once, as if resisting the urge to reach for a weapon that wasn't there. "We survived our world," Cross said, "because we were the most dangerous thing in it." The words hung in the air like a blade unsheathed. Zakel's secondary heart stuttered. He had seen the data, the wars, the plagues, the way humans had clawed their way up from the dirt of their birth world, had turned their own planet's fury against itself. They had not merely endured, they had thrived, and now they stood here, in the heart of his ship, unarmed and unafraid, because they did not need to be afraid. The realization settled over him like ice. This was not a negotiation, it was a lesson, and the galaxy would learn it. The silence in the crystalline command chamber was thick enough to suffocate in. Zakel's neural tendrils pulsed erratically beneath his exoskeleton, his mind racing through centuries of galactic history, wars waged, empires risen and fallen, the unshakable order of the Zapirian Dominion. All of it now felt fragile, like the thin membrane of a bubble, moments from bursting. Across from him, Cross stood motionless, her stance relaxed in a way that should have been impossible. The humans had no natural armor, no bioluminescent threat displays, no venomous spines, yet every instinct in Zakel's body screamed that she was the most dangerous thing in the room. Because she was. Quilek's crystalline fingers trembled as he adjusted the scanner, the device emitting a soft, discordant hum. The readings made no sense. Human physiology was a paradox. Fragile bones, soft tissue. Yet their neural activity burned like a plasma storm. Their pain tolerance thresholds were off the charts. Their adrenaline responses bordered on suicidal. And then there were the scars. Cross's arms were a latticework of them, pale, raised lines that spoke of wounds healed and survived. Some were surgical, precise. Others were jagged, brutal, a history written in flesh. Zakel's secondary heart clenched. Humans should not have survived their own world. Their home planet was a graveyard of extinct species, a testament to the brutality of natural selection. Predators with fangs the length of a Zapirian's forearm, microorganisms that liquefied tissue in hours, storms that scoured the land like orbital bombardments. And yet, humans had not just endured, they had conquered. Reynolds shifted slightly beside Cross, his gaze flicking to the translucent walls of the chamber. The ship's bioluminescent veins pulsed around them, casting eerie blue-green shadows across his face. He wasn't just observing, he was memorizing. Zakel's neural tendrils stiffened. The humans had been brought aboard unarmed, stripped of their equipment, scanned for hidden weapons. But now, watching Reynolds' eyes trace the architecture of the ship, the hexagonal power conduits, the crystalline control nodes, Zakel realized with dawning horror that it didn't matter. Humans were the weapon. Their minds were the true threat. Cross exhaled, slow and deliberate, as if savoring the tension in the air. "You've been watching us for a long time," she said, "but you never really saw us." Zakel's mandibles twitched. She was right. The Dominion's analysts had dismissed human wars as chaotic, their technology as crude, their civilizations as fractured. They had assumed humanity's greatest weakness was their lack of unity. But now, standing before them, Cross and Reynolds moved with a silent, terrifying synchronicity. They didn't need to speak. Quilek's scanner beeped sharply, drawing all eyes. The holographic display flickered, projecting a series of fragmented data streams, human military archives, declassified and pulled from some buried database. Images flickered past, cities in flames, soldiers charging into irradiated wastelands, ships ramming enemy vessels in suicidal strikes. A single frame, frozen in time, a human child, no more than 6 cycles old, standing atop the rubble of a collapsed building. In its hands, clutched like a sacred relic, was a broken rifle. Zakel's blood ran cold. That was the truth of humanity. They didn't just fight to survive, they bred survivors. Cross tilted her head, watching his reaction with something almost like pity. "Now you see," she murmured. The weight of time settled over the chamber. The Zapirian Dominion had ruled for millennia, secure in its superiority. But humanity? They had clawed their way up from the dirt of a death world, had stared into the abyss of extinction, and laughed. And now, they were here, coming home. The silence in the crystalline chamber stretched like a live wire, humming with unspoken dread. Zakel's neural filaments pulsed erratically, struggling to reconcile the images burned into his mind. The child with the rifle, the cities drowned in fire, the soldiers who had walked into radiation storms rather than surrender. This was not war as the Zapirian Dominion understood it. This was something older, something primal. Across from him, Major Cross stood motionless, her expression unreadable. The dim glow of the chamber's luminescent panels cast jagged shadows across her face, making her look less like a diplomat and more like a specter. Something carved from the same darkness that birthed her species. Quilex, ever the scientist, was the first to break the silence. His crystalline fingers flickered over a holographic display, pulling up fragmented records from the human archives. "Your kind, you have no concept of armistice," he murmured, his voice tinged with something between awe and horror. Cross exhaled, slow and deliberate. "We do, just not the way you think." The display shifted, revealing another set of images, older, grainier, a planet, lush and green, before the fires came, before the sky turned black. "Earth," Cross said softly. "Before the collapse." Zakel's mandibles tightened. He had seen dead worlds before, planets scoured by orbital bombardments, civilizations erased by supernovae. But this was different. The humans hadn't just lost their home. They had burned it themselves. "You destroyed your own world." Quilex's voice was barely a whisper. Cross didn't answer at first. Instead, she reached into a pouch at her belt and withdrew a small sealed vial inside. A single seed rested, blackened, charred, but intact. "No," she said. "We salted it." The implication hit Zakel like a plasma round. They hadn't just fought to survive. They had engineered survival. The seed wasn't a relic. It was a weapon, a promise. Humanity had looked extinction in the eye and done the unthinkable. They had planned for it. They had turned their own annihilation into a contingency, a fallback strategy written in fire and blood. And now, centuries later, they had returned. Not as refugees, not as beggars, but as gardeners of the dark. Zakel's mind reeled. The Dominion had always prided itself on its mastery of bio-crystalline technology, on its ability to shape life to its will. But this was something else entirely. The humans hadn't just adapted to death. They had weaponized it. Cross turned the vial in her fingers, watching the seed shift in the dim light. "You think we're reckless, that we're violent because we don't know any better." She met Zakel's gaze, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that made his neural filaments recoil. Not hatred, calculated patience. "But here's the thing, Commander," she said, her voice soft as a blade sliding home. "We've had a very, very long time to think about what comes next." Outside the chamber, the void stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. But in that moment, Zakel understood one thing with absolute clarity. The humans weren't just coming home. They were bringing the dark with them. The silence in the chamber was thick enough to choke on. Zakel's neural filaments pulsed erratically, their usual rhythmic glow disrupted by the storm of calculations racing through his mind. The biocrystalline walls of the negotiation chamber hummed faintly, their usual soothing resonance now grating against his senses. The humans had not just survived their violent cradle, they had harvested it. The vial in Cross's hand was proof of that. A weaponized fragment of their own biosphere, engineered not merely to endure but to consume. Quilex shifted beside him, his crystalline carapace flickering with unease. The scientist's normally precise thought patterns were fractured, his usual confidence replaced by something unfamiliar dread. "You misunderstand," Cross said, her voice still that same quiet blade. She set the vial down on the table between them, its contents shifting like liquid shadow. "This isn't a threat, it's an offer." Zackel's primary ocular node narrowed. The Dominion had encountered many species in its expansion. Some begged for mercy, others fought to the last breath. None had ever stood before them and spoken of offers with the weight of a predator circling its prey. Behind Cross, Reynolds remained motionless, his stance relaxed in a way that belied the tension coiled beneath. His eyes, flat, dark, unreadable, never left Zackel. The human soldier was a void in the chamber's light, absorbing it rather than reflecting it. "An offer," Zackel repeated, the words tasting strange in his vocal modulator. Cross smiled, not the bared teeth aggression of a challenge, but something colder, more deliberate. "You've seen what we can do, what we've had to do." She gestured to the vial. "But we didn't come here to burn your empire down. We came to ask if you'd rather stand beside us instead." The implication settled over the room like a shroud. The Dominion had spent millennia perfecting its dominance, its crystalline fleets unstoppable, its bio-engineered warriors unmatched. They had absorbed civilizations, reshaped worlds, dictated the fate of species with the detached precision of surgeons. And now, these creatures, these humans, were offering them a choice, not surrender, partnership. Quilex neural filaments flickered in agitation. "You expect us to believe you would share power after what you've shown us." Cross tilted her head considering. "Power isn't the point, survival is." She leaned forward, and for the first time, Zackel caught the faintest edge beneath her calm. "You think you're the apex predators here, but the universe is bigger than you know. And it's hungry." A ripple passed through the chamber's energy field, the bioluminescent panels dimming momentarily, as if something vast had shifted in the dark beyond the ship's hull. Zackel's mind raced. The humans had not come as supplicants. They had not come as conquerors. They had come as warnings. And the most terrifying thing, he believed them. Outside, the void stretched on, endless and uncaring. But in that moment, Zackel understood one thing with absolute clarity. The humans weren't just offering an alliance. They were offering a chance to survive what came next, and the Dominion had never been good at sharing. The bioluminescent glow of the Zapirian command chamber pulsed erratically, casting jagged shadows across the crystalline walls. Zackel felt the weight of the moment pressing against his carapace, the air thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something primal. Fear, not the clean, tactical fear of battle, but the slow, creeping dread of standing at the edge of an abyss and realizing you were never the hunter. You were the prey all along. Across from him, Cross remained still, her posture relaxed, but her eyes sharp. Human eyes. They lacked the reflective sheen of Zapirian vision, but they saw too much. They had seen the Dominion's fleets, their weapons, their arrogance, and they had not flinched. That alone was more unsettling than any display of firepower. Quilex shifted beside him, his crystalline fingers tapping a nervous rhythm against his data slate. The scientist had been silent since Cross's revelation, his mind no doubt racing through calculations, probabilities, the cold equations of survival. Zackel could almost hear the thoughts churning. If the humans, with their crude beginnings, had evolved to face something worse than us, what does that make us? The chamber's energy field flickered again, the translucent panels dimming as if something vast and unseen had drawn breath. Cross didn't react. She didn't need to. The message was clear. You are not ready for what's coming. Zackel's mandibles tightened. The Dominion had ruled for centuries, their crystalline fleets carving order from chaos, their logic unquestioned. They had encountered lesser species, absorbed or erased them, always certain of their place at the apex. But this was different. The humans had not bowed. They had not bargained. They had warned. And worse, they had done so, not with threats, but with pity that cut deeper than any blade. Outside the viewports, the void yawned, infinite and indifferent. The human warships hung there, their angular silhouettes a stark contrast to the Dominion's flowing, organic designs. They were ugly things, by Zapirian standards, brutal, asymmetrical, built for function over form. But there was a terrible beauty in their efficiency. No wasted energy, no artistry for its own sake, just survival, honed to a razor's edge. Zackel's mind raced. The Dominion's High Synod would never accept this. They would demand retribution, a cleansing fire to wipe away the insult. But Cross had not come to fight. She had come to offer a choice, one he was beginning to realize they could not afford to ignore. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. Quilek's data slate had finished its analysis. The scientist hesitated, then turned it toward Zackel. The numbers glowed, cold and undeniable. Projected fleet losses, resource depletion, the staggering, unavoidable conclusion. Even if they destroyed the humans here, today, the cost would leave them vulnerable. And something else was waiting. Cross watched him, her expression unreadable. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply waited, as if she already knew the answer. Zackel exhaled, the sound a whisper of pressurized air through his vents. The Dominion had never been good at sharing, but the universe, it seemed, did not care. The silence in the crystalline chamber stretched like a live wire, humming with unspoken tension. Zackel's claws flexed against the smooth bioluminescent surface of the command console, his mind a storm of calculations and instinctive dread. The Dominion had never retreated, not once in 700 cycles of conquest. Yet here he stood, staring at the projections on Quilek's data slate, the numbers a cold blade pressed against his throat. 83% fleet attrition, 16 major resource hubs lost, total collapse of the outer rim supply lines within 18 cycles. And beneath it all, the unspoken truth, the humans were not even fighting at full strength. Across the chamber, Major Rebecca Cross remained still, her stance relaxed, but her eyes sharp, predatory. She didn't need to speak. The weight of her silence was weapon enough. Behind her, Captain Reynolds stood with the quiet readiness of a soldier who had already measured the distance between himself and every Zapirian in the room, calculating angles of attack, weak points in crystalline armor. Zackel's secondary heart pulsed erratically. Quilek shifted beside him, his bioluminescent markings flickering with unease. "Commander," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the thrum of the ship's core. "The projections account only for known human assets. If they have more of those things." He didn't need to elaborate. The memory of the orbital footage still burned in Zackel's mind. The human warships, yes, but worse, the other vessels. The ones that moved like living shadows, slipping through their defenses as if space itself bent to their will. The ones whose weapon signatures matched no known galactic design. And then there was Earth, a planet that should have been a graveyard. A world scoured by solar flares, atmospheric collapse, radiation storms that would have reduced any civilized species to scattered, irradiated remnants. Yet the humans had not just survived. They had thrived. Cross tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something beyond the range of Zapirian hearing. "You're wondering how," she said, her voice low, almost conversational. "How we endured when your model said we should have been extinct 10 times over." Zackel's spine stiffened. She smiled then, a slow, terrible thing. "We didn't adapt to the death of our world. Commander, we made it adapt to us." A flicker of movement on the holo display. An image resolving from the data stream. A city, but not the ruins the Dominion scouts had expected. Towers of blackened alloy rose from the ashen soil. their surfaces crawling with luminous veins of energy. Vast geometric farms stretched across irradiated plains, their crops genetically reforged to thrive on poison. And beneath it all, deep in the planet's crust, the faint, rhythmic pulse of engines. Terraforming engines, Quailex made a sound like a choked hiss. They rebuilt their atmosphere. Cross didn't deny it. Took us 2 centuries, she said, but we learned early, if the universe tries to kill you, you don't just survive. You make damn sure it never tries again. Zackle felt something cold coil in his gut. This was not a species that had crawled back from extinction. This was a species that had hunted extinction down and broken its spine. And now they stood here, not with pleas for mercy, but with an offer. An offer the Dominion could not refuse, because the humans had not come to fight. They had come to win, and Zackle, for the first time in his life, understood what true fear tasted like. The silence in the observation chamber was thick enough to suffocate in. Zackle's crystalline fingers hovered over the holographic display, tracing the edges of Earth's reconstructed biosphere. The data pulsed in his vision, a relentless stream of numbers and schematics that defied every known law of planetary recovery. The humans had not merely restored their world, they had rewritten it. The atmosphere, once choked with radiation, now hummed with engineered stability. The oceans, once dead, teemed with biosynthetic lifeforms designed to metabolize toxins. Even the land itself had been reforged, its tectonic plates stabilized by deep core regulators humming beneath the crust. This was not survival. This was vengeance. Quailex stood beside him, his bioluminescent veins flickering erratically, a telltale sign of distress. His mandibles twitched as he parsed through the final dataset. The terraforming signatures, they matched the Dominion's own atmospheric processors. His voice was a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile illusion of control they still clung to. But these are centuries more advanced. Zackle didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on the feed from the surface, on the humans moving through their cities with the ease of conquerors. They walked beneath skies. They had stolen back from annihilation. They breathed air they had forced into purity, and they had done it alone. No galactic aid, no mercy, no surrender. Just stubborn, relentless defiance. A chime sounded, a request for final confirmation from the Dominion's High Synod. The order was implicit: assess the threat. Determine if eradication is still viable. Zackle's grip tightened. Eradication? Against this? His mind flashed to the human warships hanging in orbit, their hulls layered with adaptive armor that could self-repair mid-battle, to their railgun arrays, capable of punching through planetary shields, to the cold, calculating eyes of Major Cross, who had looked upon the Dominion's fleet, not with fear, but with the patience of a predator who had already won. Humans did not fight wars the way the galaxy understood them. They fought to erase the very concept of defeat. Quailex exhaled sharply, his carapace vibrating with suppressed dread. Commander, if we engage them now, we won't just lose. We'll give them a reason to come for us next. Zackle knew he was right. The Dominion had spent millennia pruning the galaxy of species too weak to resist assimilation. But humanity had spent its exile sharpening its teeth. And now they stood at the threshold of the stars, not as refugees, not as victims, but as heirs to a legacy written in fire and iron. Zackle made his decision. He input the command, sending the final transmission to the Synod, not a request for reinforcements, not a plea for tactical advice. Do not provoke them. They are not what we thought. They are worse. Outside the viewport, Earth's orbital defenses shimmered to life, their energy signatures a silent, luminous promise. The humans had planted their flag in the sky, and the galaxy would learn too late what happened when Earth's children came home. The warning spreads. The transmission burned across the void at superluminal speeds, slicing through the quantum relay network of the Dominion like a scalpel through flesh. By the time it reached the Synod's crystalline spires, the message had already been intercepted, analyzed, and most dangerously whispered. High Synod Veskil received it in the heart of the grand atrium, her bioluminescent filaments dimming as the data pulsed through her neural interface. The words were simple. The implications were not. Do not provoke them. Her secondary limbs twitched in involuntary agitation. Zapkel was not a cautious commander. He had purged 3 upstart species in his tenure, each with less hesitation than the last. If he was warning restraint, the projection before her shifted, displaying the tactical readouts of Earth's orbital grid. The humans had not merely reactivated their defenses, they had evolved them. Where there had once been skeletal platforms of steel and uranium, now hung monstrous constructs of blackened alloy and humming plasma conduits. Their signatures defied classification. Part weapon, part fortress, part something the Dominion's algorithms flagged as theoretical. Veskil's mandibles tightened. A junior analyst dared to speak, his voice a brittle chitter. High Synod. The humans, their technology, it shouldn't be possible, the energy signatures alone violate. She silenced him with a gesture. The galaxy had rules, laws of physics, of warfare, of civilized advancement. The humans had never cared for rules. And now, the Dominion faced the consequences. Veskil turned to the war table, where holograms of 100 conquered worlds flickered in obedient silence. For the first time in millennia, doubt slithered through her veins. They had assumed humanity would break. Instead, it had forged itself in the dark. Her decision took only moments. Recall all forward fleets from the Orion Arm, seal the border zones. And she hesitated. The next words tasting like poison. Open a diplomatic channel. The chamber erupted in dissonant harmonics, protests vibrating through the crystalline architecture. She let them rage. Beyond the viewports, the stars burned cold and indifferent. The humans were coming, and the Dominion, for all its power, was not ready.